Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 7, our last week of online remote learning for the 2019-2020 school year. This is probably going to be my last video. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what I wanted you to get from last week. And then I'm going to tell you some information about what you're doing this week for biology. And then I will talk about how we're calculating grades and give you a little bit of some information on the grading system for remote learning right now. So first thing was from week 6, you were supposed to complete lessons 3 and 4, I think it was. Lesson 3 was cellular respiration, and lesson 4 was about the carbon cycle. So cellular respiration is the process that all living things go through. So in lesson 2, you learned about photosynthesis, in which trees take sunlight energy and water and carbon dioxide, and they turn that into glucose and oxygen gas. So glucose is where the energy that came from the sun is stored. It's trapped in the chemical bonds of the glucose molecule. And every living thing needs energy to be alive, to perform all of its cellular functions. And so cellular respiration is the chemical process where our cells take that glucose and break those chemical bonds and release the energy and turn that energy into a form of energy that our cells can use, called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. So plants do cellular respiration as well. They take the glucose that they made from photosynthesis and then they break it down to make ATP so that they can perform their basic cellular functions. Cellular respiration is the process that's responsible for creating the energy. So all of you that say the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, that's because of cellular respiration. That's because powerhouse is like a place where energy is made, and the mitochondria is the organelle inside of our cells that makes that ATP or converts that glucose into energy. So now you know what you're actually talking about when you mindlessly repeat that phrase. So cellular respiration has 2 parts, aerobic and anaerobic. Anaerobic cellular respiration does not require oxygen, and you get way less ATP from it. So it makes less energy. Some organisms only do anaerobic cellular respiration, and that is how they make all of their ATP. And then if you have mitochondria in your cells, then the next step is what's actually made in anaerobic cellular respiration gets brought over into the mitochondria to do aerobic cellular respiration. And in that process, oxygen is required. So when you are like working out or walking or, doing like movement of some kind, and you feel your breathing rate increase, that's in part because your cells are making more carbon dioxide and because your cells need more oxygen so that they can do more cellular respiration, because they need more energy because you're using more energy. So so your breathing rate increases because you have more carbon dioxide in your blood, and so you have to get that out, and then you need more oxygen to come in. So that's cellular respiration. It's really just, the main idea is glucose plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide, water, and ATP, the energy that we're talking about. So hopefully you got that from the lesson, the videos and stuff like that. And then the last lesson from last week was about the carbon cycle. So we have carbon cycles happening on small scales and really, really big scales. We have cycles of matter and energy that are happening inside of our bodies as well as in the ecosystems in which we live. So the carbon cycle and cycles of other matter and energy are really just this idea that two things, matter and energy, cannot be created or destroyed. So the law of conservation of matter and the law of conservation of energy both say that that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So basically, on planet Earth, all of the matter and all the energy that we have just constantly gets recycled into other forms of matter. Obviously, we get more energy from the sun, but all of the matter that we have on planet Earth is all the matter that we have. And that amount doesn't change. It just kind of shuffles around to different places. So this is, if you think about like following a carbon atom from the atmosphere into a plant. So as you can see, I have some lovely plants here. So all day long, those plants are taking the sunlight that comes in to my house, plus the water that I give them once a week, plus the carbon dioxide that I'm exhaling. And they take those things and they convert them into glucose and oxygen. And I breathe the oxygen, or Luna breathes the oxygen. Now, I wouldn't eat any of those plants, but if I was growing like basil, which I am growing basil right now, and rosemary, then those same processes are happening inside of those things. And then let's say I want to, like make a nice caprese salad. And so I'm going to take the basil, and when I eat the basil, there's glucose in it. And so that glucose from photosynthesis goes into me, and then my body can use that glucose for cellular respiration so that I have energy. There's a really funny Parks and Rec episode where Chris Pratt's character, Andy Dwyer, realizes that like all of the food that we eat is energy, and he goes like, bam, pizza, bam, cheeseburger, and he's like jumping around, and I always think of that. Anyway, so carbon cycle is really just this idea that carbon is moving throughout ecosystems or the planet, however, whatever scale you want to look at, constantly. So let's say I ate that basil, and then the carbon that we tracked, I got to use for energy. Okay. So then when I exhale, after cellular respiration, the carbon itself gets turned into carbon dioxide, and that carbon gets exhaled. And so now it's back in the air, and so then another one of my plants can take it up or whatever. So the carbon cycle is really just carbon moving through these processes. So cellular respiration adds carbon to the atmosphere. Photosynthesis takes carbon away from the atmosphere by storing it as biomass. And energy the same way. And so typically energy kind of travels with the carbon. In photosynthesis, it gets joined into the glucose molecule, and then they kind of move together depending on what happens to it. So if it gets like pooped out or something, then the energy that was associated with it might have been used in that organism some other way. So basically, that's cycles of matter and energy. If you think about my fish tank, let's see if I can do this. There's like a little carbon cycle that's happening in here. So we have real plants, and then we have fish, and I have light and water. So the fish do cellular respiration. The plants take in the carbon dioxide that's dissolved into the water. They take in the water, some of it, not all of it, and then they can convert that into glucose, which helps them grow. So I've noticed actually over the past few weeks that some of my aquarium plants have had like a crazy growth spurt. Some of the other plants in my house have too. I think that's part of spring. And so, that's what I wanted you to get. Cycles of matter and energy. So matter, energy can't be created or destroyed. They're basically just moving around ecosystems in different forms. And the processes that move the carbon or the matter and the energy around are going to be photosynthesis, cellular respiration, but also decomposition. So like One of my fish died a couple weeks ago, and I buried it. So the biomass that was in the fish is now being decomposed outside by decomposers like worms and other bacteria and stuff like that, fungus. And then those organisms are using that matter to create their own biomass because they're eating those things. And then also things like when cows poop, they poop out some extra glucose that can be used as fertilizer a lot of times. So also things that get cycled are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And they go through their own cycles called the nitrogen cycle, the potassium cycle, and the phosphorus cycle. And if you have ever tried to grow any kind of plants, or if you have a yard and you've tried to fertilize your yard, or I have some fertilizer that I have to put in my houseplants, and all those fertilizers contain different things like nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, because plants incorporate those minerals or those elements into them as well. So like a banana has a lot of potassium in it, and that's because it takes a lot of potassium from the soil and incorporates it into the banana part of a banana tree. So cycles of energy and matter are really just the way that these things move through ecosystems. For this next week, the last lesson that we have for this unit is about climate change. So climate change is this idea, and you have almost certainly heard about it, that hopefully you've heard about it, that humans are adding more atmospheric carbon dioxide than the carbon cycle can kind of like recycle through or photosynthesize through. And so because there are more carbon atoms in the atmosphere in the form of either methane or carbon dioxide, what happens is that carbon has like a heat trapping effect. So a lot of sunlight that comes to Earth bounces back out into space. But because of atmospheric methane and atmospheric carbon dioxide, it gets trapped, and that's causing the increase in global temperatures. So you'll get into those processes a little bit more in detail in this last unit, or this last lesson. And then the last thing that you have to do is our unit assessment. So I think it's like 15-ish multiple choice questions, and it's just from like main ideas from each of the lessons from this trees unit that we've covered. Some things to note about it are that it is different than your other exit tickets because you can only take it one time. It is like a test. It is like our unit assessment, and technically I guess it would be considered our final as well because we're not giving anything else after that. And so you will need to take that in one sitting. It won't be resumable, and you won't be able to take it more than one time. So make sure you review your student activity sheets, your exit tickets from the previous lessons before you sit down to take that. And just know that it is different and that you will only be able to take it one time. Okay, so then the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was grades. So this is a complicated thing that we've never done before, and we're all just kind of figuring it out as we go along. If you want to know what your grade was on April 6th when this started, I have those. The guidelines that we got from the district and from Mr. Youngquist said that if you engage in remote learning, your grade on that date can't go down. Now, many of you have done some of the assignments, but not all of them. And so to me, engagement is that you're trying on all of the stuff that we're doing. So everything that you didn't complete or didn't turn in is listed in the gradebook as missing. And so your grade can go down if you didn't engage in all of the assignments that we gave. And so I keep updating grades maybe like twice a week or something like that. So hopefully you've been able to follow that and see how your grade has changed. Many of you's grades have improved because a lot of the grading that I've been doing is like student activity sheets are just like, did you answer all of the questions? And then I would maybe grade for correctness one of the questions on there. But so I have those grades from April 6th. I have a record of your engagement and participation in the assignments since then, since remote learning. And so on Tuesday, May 26th, is the last day to turn in any late work. Anything that's not in after that day, I can't accept right now. And so make sure if you got behind on stuff that you're focusing on that deadline. Tuesday, May 26th. Because on Wednesday, let me make sure I have the right numbers. Yeah, because on Wednesday, May 27th, by noon, we have to put in IC the final grade for our classes. So Wednesday at noon on May 27th will be a grade for biology in Infinite Campus. Then you will get an email from the school that says, like, a link to a website where you can determine if you want credit versus no credit. So, here's what I would recommend when you're trying to decide that. If the letter grade that you have would increase your GPA, then I would take the letter grade. If it would decrease your GPA, let's say you normally get A's and right now you're at a C, then I would just take credit, because the difference as a letter grade will impact your GPA, and a credit option, just taking credit, will not impact your GPA. So you get to decide if you want that letter grade that we post at noon on May 27th, or if you want just credit for the class and no letter grade. And then we have until Thursday, May 28th at 4 p.m. to finalize that. So you mark in that website that you'll get the email if you want credit, and then I just change your letter grade to passing, and then you just get the credit for the class. If you have an F on Wednesday at noon, you don't really have any options for credit or a letter grade. Everyone that does not pass doesn't get an F. Everyone gets an incomplete. So no one will be failing this class, but if you have an F, you will not get credit for the class. And so if that's the case, you will get an incomplete, which will be represented as the letter I in the gradebook. And there will be future opportunities for you to make up that credit, to earn back the work that you missed, to earn a grade for the class, or to earn credit for the class. We're not exactly sure what those will look like. They could be online summer school. It could be that you just retake the class. Let's say if you failed first semester and then got an incomplete for second semester, the recommendation will be that you just retake biology. If you were like super close, then you might just have a little bit more time to work on some things. So we're still trying to figure out what that looks like, because that's something that we've never really done before. So just be patient if that's the category that you fall in, and pay attention to emails and stuff like that. So that's the craziness of grades. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. I think that's all the information that I had to share with you. Please reach out if you have questions about the last unit, the last lesson, the assessment. There will be an extra credit opportunity. Many of you have been worried that you are going to be really close, or you are not sure if you're going to pass, or some of you have just asked, like, what can I do to bring up my grade? There was an extra credit assignment at the end of the Serengeti unit, which was the Keystone Species Research. And then there is an extra credit assignment at the end of this unit, which will actually be kind of like a short reflection on something that we learned in class this year. Again, that will be optional, and it will be extra credit. It will be used especially if you are within 1% of the next letter grade. So let's say you have a 79.1% or something like that. That's a C+. If you do that extra credit opportunity, then I have the ability to bump you up to a B. But that's given that you've completed all the other assignments. So if you're concerned about your grade, do those extra credit things. Also, all of the exit tickets, you can retake if you wanted to redo those. Any late work, I'm still accepting through May 26th. So just be on top of things and let me know what questions you have. I realize this video is getting kind of long. So please email me if you have questions. I really miss you. It's been an honor to be your biology teacher this year. I really feel sad about the way that this year has ended because I miss you guys so much and I miss seeing you every day and talking about science with you all. So just know that I'm super bummed at the way this is ending and I miss you guys a lot. And I hope that you're doing well. And please reach out if you have any questions. I love you. Bye.